What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, I want to do a little mailbag because I got so many questions at John Middlekauff, my Instagram, fire in those DMs. Questions answered here on the show. I'm going to try to go quick because we got a decent amount of questions. So just my name, fire in those DMs wide open. We'll start with Miles. Given all the game-swinging field goals we've seen this year and the randomness associated with end results, I was wondering if you think the NFL would ever make a rule change to eliminate the kickers. I know a lot of head coaches and fans hate that these non-football players sometimes decide games. So it got me thinking, what if they turn the red zone into the score zone? No more field goal attempts, but instead teams need to get inside the red zone to automatically qualify for 3. Similar to baseball, if a team wants to take 3 points when they cross the opponent's 20-yard line, the coach can signal 3 to the ref. Where this can get interesting is the end of games. Basically, not only that, if a team gets to, say, the 19-yard line with a minute left to go, down 2, the other team has a couple timeouts, they wouldn't be able to take knees and kick field goals. I think it would require a lot more strategy. I think it's a little more complicated than the way you said once they get into the quote-unquote score zone, and I know I get automatically 3, couldn't I just run out the clock? I could still take knees. You'd have to call timeouts. What would be the difference? And I know I'd get the 3. I think the problem, the volatility of football, and this is why people hate the tush push, is because we know what's going to happen. They're going to get a yard or 2. Is I can stop you. We just saw in the Ravens game, like I can get a goal line stand. I can cause a turnover. You can miss a field goal. Like we don't know what's going to happen. When the Rams lined up for that field goal, I thought the Eagles were going to lose the game. Like that's a same thing with the Packer game when they blocked it. You just never know. And I know some field goals are longer than others, and you're talking about, a 19-yard field goal is 29, is like 35 yards, right? The actual when you factor in the 10 yards for the goal line and then whatever 6 or 7 for where they line up. So you usually add 15 plus yards to, if it's a 20-yard, if you're at the 20-yard line, I view it as a 35-yard field goal. Could be off a yard depending on, exactly how you line up, but that's usually, the standard. But I just think that's never happening, or at least for the foreseeable future. I would never say never. Okay, let's get into Jake. I'm here in the great state of Alaska. Never been, but know some people that have, and I'm very fascinated to go. I would love to watch the animals, play a little golf, maybe go on like a elk hunt. Of the 6 teams, not that I've ever been on an elk hunt, but if I was going to go on one, Alaska sounds like the place. There are currently 6 teams that are 0-3. Who is truly the quote-unquote worst team in the league, and who do you think still has a shot of not finishing the season with a losing record? I personally would rank them like this: the Titans, the Saints, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Texans, the Giants. P.S. There's still room to join the anti-Monday night doubleheader club, by the way. Next Monday night, 2 games overlap. Yeah, but if you check and Google the games, it is Miami against the Jets, kind of like the Jets' money line in that game, and the Broncos against Jake Browning. So that sucks. And I'm not, one thing I'm going to try very, very, make a conscious effort to do is not be negative. I'm just in general in life, but specifically like complaining about football games. It's so stupid. But we all agree Jets-Dolphins is not a great Monday night game. But if you were going to have Jets-Dolphins on Monday night, at least have the other game. So if one of the 2 games is close, it's not the worst thing in the world. I would say currently I would agree the Titans. I would say the Saints are better than the Jets. I think the Saints are better than the Jets and the Dolphins because I do think their offense is not bad. I would take the Saints over those 2 teams. So I would go Titans, Dolphins, Jets, Saints, Texans, Giants, potentially Giants, Texans, depending on how Dart looks. So I don't hate it. I think the Texans and Giants, I think the Giants would have the best capability of like looking up and they're competitive and they're 7-8 wins. I think the Texans are in some trouble. Now they do play the the Titans this week, if they were to lose that game, they are screwed. Fan from Canada. My question is, why do you constantly refer to Jim Tomsula as one of the worst coaches of all time? I get he wasn't good, but I think guys like Urban Meyer, Nathaniel Hackett, and Bobby Petrino were way worse. I'm curious, because the 49ers had him as an assistant for 8+ years in-house. When someone works in the same company for several years, usually means he's relatively well-liked. Well, there's no disputing. He was well-liked, and he was an excellent defensive line coach. Jim Tomsula was a highly respected position coach. Very highly respected position coach. But when he got the job, it would be like going from a high-level CEO to a guy that's not even middle management. I mean, Jim Tomsula is a position coach, that's it. So, yeah, his record is not the worst of all time. He will, Chip Kelly, who came after him, who's probably much more suited to be a head coach, had a worse record than Jim Tomsula. It's one of those things you just had to be there. So this is more on personal experience. Like, Urban Meyer was objectively a worse coach. He did not make it through the season. Nathaniel Hackett did not make it through one season. Josh McDaniels has had 2 head coaching jobs and been fired midway through year 2 in both. So I just use Jim Tomsula as a reference point. Mainly because I was there. Like, I don't think if you weren't living and doing what I was doing for a living, covering football, talking about football, you probably would bring up other people. But I would put Jim Tom. And it's no shade. Like, Jim Tomsula, by all accounts, nice guy. Though rumors back then that he backstabbed Jim Harbaugh and Fangio. But, again, it's more of a, personal preference, right? Like, if we all ate at the same restaurants, we would be like, oh, these 3, there would be a lot of agreement of like, these are the best restaurants in America, right? And this would be like, that's the worst sandwich I've ever had. But we all live in different places. We all have different tastes, and we're all over the board, right? It's no different with football. If you are a Giants fan or a Jags fan or whoever fan, like if I went to a Giants fan, like, who's the worst coach you've ever seen, their first reaction would probably be like Joe Judge, right? And what could I argue with them? I mean, he called a quarterback sneak from their own 9-yard line. I mean, so I think it's all personal experience when we bring up making fun of coaches. It's like, who's the worst quarterback you've ever seen? Well, if you went different areas of the country, everyone would probably have a different example. Steeler fan. I've always wondered why the Ravens franchise isn't looked at an all-time as an all-time franchise. They are technically the same franchise that had Jim Brown and won a ton of championships. See, I'm going to stop you before you even get to your question. When you move, right? When you exist somewhere, move, go away, and then come back, you don't have the same history as just like the New York Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys or the Alabama Crimson Tide, where it's just universal, right? It's like what Bill Simmons always argues with the Lakers. It's like, how do you claim the Minnesota titles? And I kind of agree. You can keep the same name, but when you played in different cities, like they're separate operations. This is way before my time, but they used to call them the New York Football Giants because the San Francisco Giants came from New York, or the Brooklyn Dodgers. But like when you compare the Brooklyn history to the LA history, like I have a hard time doing that. So I hear what you're saying about these franchises, but when you move and you become a different franchise, like we don't see it as much anymore because it rarely happens. Like the Raiders, for example. Whatever happens in Vegas, especially once the Davis family no longer owns the team, it's going to be hard for the Raiders in Vegas to when they start. Now theirs is weird because they haven't had much success lately. But talk about Jim Plunkett. It's like Jim Plunkett did that in L.A., right? I just think it's very difficult. Talking about the Chicago fans can take a lot of pride in the 85 Bears, George Halas building our team back in the 50s, right? If you're a Packer fan, even if you're younger than me and you go, freaking Vince Lombardi coached the Green Bay Packers, you can say it's part of the same history, right? It's like the same family line. I think when you start moving around cities, it becomes really complicated. But I think it's actually a huge reflection of how successful Baltimore has been since moving there. What year was that? They moved in 95, 96. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Week 4 kicks off tonight with a divisional battle between Seattle and Arizona. I want you to check out these streaks from Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. Do you know that the Seahawks, they've won 7 in a row against the Cards? That goes back to 2021. They've also won 7 in a row, just road games. So they're playing really well on the road. I typically like the home team on these short weeks, but I love Seattle -1.5 Thursday Night Football. I also like Sam Darnold, might be my favorite bet of the night, over 1.5 touchdowns. You get that in the plus money. And the Cardinals secondary's beat up, and I think they're in major trouble. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but you also get $150 in bonus bets. Plus, tonight on Hard Rock Bet, you can get a Thursday night parlay boost for the game. Boost your same game parlay or SGP max so your bet pays extra winnings. I was listening to your thoughts on Brian Thomas Jr. and his struggles this year, and I think I disagree a bit. I think the problem is that he really didn't start breaking out until later in the season when he was playing with McCorkle. That'd be Mac Jones. I said McCorkle. He said Mac Jones. I just love that his real name is McCorkle. I don't think he has a very good connection with Trevor Lawrence, and it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. Keep up the great work. My theory was that he kind of lost a little confidence when they drafted Travis Hunter, and it kind of took the wind out of his star. So, again, that was just a completely uneducated theory. I didn't claim to be right on that one. You're probably right. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for you there. But there's no disputing, like, he's a really talented player, and sometimes guys just don't have a good connection. I mean, I don't think we talk about that enough. Sometimes you're so good, like Mahomes and peak Tyreek Hill, right? Or Josh Allen and, I mean, I guess who's the best receiver he played with? Diggs. Lamar and the tight ends, right? Burrow and Chase. But sometimes it's like, yeah, our cohesion's off. It just doesn't work. We see that sometimes with like free agent wide receivers. You see that in baseball with pitchers. Some pitchers have a specific catcher for them. Probably pretty rare. I don't follow baseball as close as I used to, but used to be more like Tim Wakefield had a specific catcher, which made sense because he threw a knuckleball. I hear Colin suggest that Burrow should try to get out of Cincinnati. While the Bengals are cheap, I feel like they've done everything Burrow has wanted since he got there. They drafted Chase. They paid him. They paid Chase and Higgins. They brought back Trey Hendrickson. It'd be much harder to field a better D and O line with the money they have tied up in Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. I agree. How could Burrow be the one getting screwed? I don't think he's totally getting screwed. And I've said over and over, even if he feels that way, Mike Brown is not going to care for the foreseeable future. Because not only am I paying you a premium, I've paid these 2 wide receivers. Now, every single person would have paid Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a guy that every franchise in America pays. I do think the T. Higgins thing was, how fundamentally do you want to build your team? And that feels like peer pressure for the quarterback where I can find another T. Higgins, even if he's not quite as good. But if I use a second or third rounder on a wide receiver and then I use this money and allocate the resources other places, isn't that part of paying Joe Burrow to make guys look good to go along with Jamar Chase? Maybe we draft one of these sweet running backs. I don't know. But I totally in agreement there. We could argue, like, is this the right move? There's a reason that GM's GM and quarterback's quarterback. Belichick didn't ever listen to Tom Brady, and it resulted in 9 Super Bowl appearances and 6 victories. If he would have listened to Tom, it would have been completely different, right? So there's a reason, in business, the old adage, and Colin's been saying this, is like, take the emotion out of it. When you're too emotionally tied to a business deal, whatever that may be, right? Whether it be a big business deal, whether it be a car purchase, whether it be arguing over a salary, whatever it is, the more emotionally you get connected, the harder it is for clarity and the easier it is to make a mistake. Well, how could a player not be emotionally tied? He's in the locker room, they're his friends. And there's somewhat of a buffer when you're the GM, even more than the coach, that you can be unemotional about the player. Even if in this modern day NFL, the GM's definitely, I don't know, I want to say the word tight, but I think in a lot of franchises, definitely with their star players and their high-end guys, the GMs, they have very good relationships, right? I mean, you hear a lot of these players now and name the GM constantly, right? Obviously, the best example is the Chiefs with Mahomes and Patrick, or I guess Patrick Mahomes is the same guy. Kelsey, they talk about Veach a lot, but it's no different than the Eagles with Howie. Like he knows his players really well, but he also can be cutthroat when he needs to. And as a player, you don't want to lose any of your friends that are good players. But that's not the way the business works. Do you think the Vikings are regretting not signing Sam Darnold? JJ McCarthy is hurt again and did not leave me impressed over the two games. Personally, I think the Vikings made a mistake. I realize Sam didn't play well last game of the season in the playoff game. I think the GMs sometimes don't realize the benefit of having someone play every year over every play year over year for them. Sam knew the system. They would have been able to build on the last year. Baker is a great example of this. He's a good first season with the Bucks, but seems to have gotten better progressively each of the next couple years. Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, the difference of the Baker situation is once they pulled the trigger on JJ, while I agree you're going to have a short lease with JJ, like JJ's not getting 4 years to be injured in and out of the lineup. Like he's getting a couple. He better get back on the field and be good, or this is going to be short lived. But after year one, they were in a tough position. And I think it's easy to say that now. Now, you could also say, like, who cares? Use the pick on him. He can be the backup quarterback. It was pretty risky. There's no doubt about it. But their team wouldn't look the same today that they allocated all those resources on buying players if they had kept Sam. Now, you could argue, well, the team they had last year won 14 games. So I think I here's what I know. The chances that J.J. McCarthy is ever as good as Sam was last year or is currently, even if Sam doesn't improve, which naturally, like you said about Baker, guys just kind of do once they prove they're kind of good, is slim to none. Like it would be a huge upset if J.J. McCarthy is as good as those guys, right? To be ever as good as Kirk Cousins or like it doesn't feel likely. On top of he can't stay on the field. So I think if he's in and out of lineup this year, they might regret it. But at the time, like I understood where they were coming from. I do. I mean, because part of drafting JJ McCarthy really high is like you believed in it. But also sometimes with a draft pick, when you haven't seen him play, it's essentially like buying a stock. You can have the conviction. You can have got in on $10. You're like, I'm telling you, I think there's a chance this thing goes to 50 or 100. But then after a year or two, if that $10 stock is at $7, like you got to contemplate selling it. Now, sometimes if you sell it at $7 and take your 30% haircut over the next couple years, like Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield or now Daniel Jones, that thing goes to $50 and it kicks you in the nuts. A lot of times it does not, though. So I think the Vikings are monitoring the situation closely. I would say they're not full regret yet, but if Sam leads Seattle to the playoffs and J.J. McCarthy becomes I don't know, just hurt all the time, let alone not good player, you could be correct. You talking about someone's question of Russell playing himself out of the Hall of Fame really grinds my gears about how Football Hall of Fame is being diluted and the baseball to that of the baseball and basketball ones. My personal criteria for the Hall of Fame should be this. You need to either have changed the way the position gets played, or if we're writing the anthology of football, if your name has to be included, then you belong in the Hall of Fame. The idea of my childhood hero, Darrelle Revis, sharing the Hall of Fame title with Russell Wilson is just disappointing. You could argue, like, Revis is one of the best players ever at his position and on defense. Russell is not one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But you could argue, telling the story of football in the internet age, he played a pivotal role. Like, he helped one of the best teams in the league get to a couple Super Bowls, win a Super Bowl, become a Pro Bowler as a mid-round pick, kind of change football as a short player. Think of the floodgates that opened to little guys being drafted high. You go back to when I was a kid in the 90s, none of these guys would have been drafted high. Baker Mayfield, no. Kyler Murray, no chance. Not saying that they might not have deserved it, but they would not have been because you didn't draft players high. They were short. So I think Russell Wilson kind of opened that opportunity. I mean, Bryce Young, it's like 5'10", a buck 50. I'd make the argument you could write the story without Russell because you could just talk about Pete in the defense, but he played a pretty pivotal role there. So I might make the argument. I'm coming around on Russell. If you put him in the Hall of Fame, there's worse guys in there. Is it fair to say that this year has played out that the top NFC teams, Eagles, Packers, Rams, Lions, look stronger than the AFC? Bills, Ravens, Chargers, Chiefs. I would say right now the NFC looks pretty strong, right? Even if their teams have weird games, like the Eagles have kind of scuffled on offense. I see Drew Brees, he took a giant dump on the Eagles offense, saying he hates watching it, which I don't disagree when they're playing bad, but when they're right, they're fun. I mean, it's fun to watch Saquon Barkley bust 50-yard runs, AJ and Devontae make big plays. When they're playing well, they're a fun offense to watch. But I would tend to agree. I would tend to agree. I think the NFC's teams are more complete for sure. I mean, I just don't think the Bills are that good on defense. Ravens offense has major question marks. Same with the Chiefs. You know, the Chargers, do they have the high end talent to like win the Super Bowl? You know, Denver's clearly got some issues. Bo Nix, I saw someone do a statistical breakdown and kind of a tape breakdown. Like he is missing too many layups, and on the big plays, he's overthrowing them. So, like, part of being an elite team is like you need that guy to play better. So, yeah, I think there are a lot of question marks with the AFC. The Colts, like, are the Colts going to rattle off playoff victories? I don't know. Doubtful. College football question. I'm a diehard Wisconsin fan. Are we dead? Luke Fickell was a huge swing, and it's blowing up in front of our faces. I heard your comments on Gundy at Oklahoma State, and now I fear that Wisconsin is going to be left behind too. Listen, in any industry change, right? In any pivotal uh, switch or just direction for an industry, there are going to be big winners and there are going to be losers. And some of those big winners have already been winning, right? So NIL, like Ohio State, awesome. Oregon, sweet. Sign me up. Texas, right? I'm in. Georgia, cool. And some of these other teams, like, damn, Texas Tech is now in the mix. Like, no, Texas Tech is a real player, right? Miami, like, hey, we got big money. We're back. So it clearly brings some got people back, and the winners stay the winners, but also there are going to be some losers. And I actually think, you know, I probably said this over the last couple of weeks. I think one of the big winners of NIL is the Big Ten as a whole, right? I feel their conference is, and I told this to Jackson, it feels better or feels deeper than it has been. I think NIL plays a role. But I don't know. I mean, Maryland Rutgers look credible. Um, I wouldn't say your UCLA bad, but it clearly has not gone well. And you know that picture slash video went viral was the AD sitting with McCarthy, which in theory shouldn't be that weird. McCarthy lived in Green Bay for 15 years. He's synonymous with that area. Probably has a place, good friends. But it's like, well, Fickle's going to get fired. They're chanting fire Fickle. Mike McCarthy's probably not going to get an NFL job. Would he be interested in that? I mean, what if they pay him $6-7 million? Question is, can you win there? And NIL to me is the number one question, right? You can give me a large, couple $1 million for my offensive and defensive coordinator. Great, but I'm in a conference with Ohio State, which I would say when you factor in everything is the best program in the country. Michigan is not going to go quietly, even as they kind of ebb, little downturn post Harbaugh, but they're going to spend huge money. Oregon and Penn State are just humming, right? They recruit at a high level. They have money. They're producing dudes. USC is going to start storming back because of the money. Who am I missing? I'm missing. Washington is going to be solid. Like they got money and they care about football, and they have really been good beside the one Jimmy Lake season since Chris Peterson got there. Like that program has just been a solid. It's kind of been like the West Coast version of like Iowa, maybe a little bit better. And I think it's hard. So you can't have every team in the conference can't be good. Like part of the SEC, like how did Lane get good? Well, look at some programs. Florida fell off the cliff. Florida has not been good. Mississippi State sucks. Mississippi State 10 years ago, like Dan Mullen, Dak Prescott, they were good. So programs like some people in your conference, if you're going to win 9, 10 games, have to go the other way. And I don't know. I would bet against it. Look at Nebraska, right? Like I grew up, Nebraska was like an NFL team. And now they feel like they're trying, but it's never going to be the same. It just, and that's no shade. I'm not. I would love to root for Nebraska. I appreciate the brand, but I don't know. Okay, a couple more. Is Shane Waldron the worst pass game coordinator in league history? As soon as he leaves the Rams, Cup goes for the Triple Crown. Then after he leaves the Seahawks, JSN monster breakout. Last season as the Bears pass game coordinator, Rome looked like a bust. Now he's gone. Rome is looking like one of the top receivers in the league. He's with the Jags and making BTJ look like a fringe wide receiver 3. Something or nothing. I don't know. I'd have to text around. I mean, clearly you would say his resume is not great. And I think some guys just get in this, if you work at the right place, right? If you go to the right place, I've said one thing I benefit from is the organization I was with had a lot of people that knew what they were doing and have gone on to have a lot of success. Personnel people and coaches. So when I have questions, when I have thoughts, like I can go to high level people, right? Eagles winning Super Bowls, Chiefs winning Super Bowls. Like I can text people in these organizations and get their opinions that are part of the best teams in the league, that have the best players in the league. But if I had been offered a job with the Arizona Cardinals at the time or the Miami Dolphins or whoever, just some bad organization, I would have taken that job. I only went to the Eagles because that was my best opportunity. It was my only opportunity. Coach Hill got on the phone with Andy Reid. Howie Roseman interviewed me. I got the gig, right? It just happened to be that, Veach and Lewis Riddick and Sean McDermott and all these guys were there. And you look at Shane Waldron, he got in with the Rams. So it's like Sean McVay. So he knows Liam Cohen because Liam Cohen was there. And he gets the hype of McVay, but it's just, he was just there. So is he a good coach just because he was hired by Sean McVay? Right? There's no saying that I would have been a good GM just because Andy Reid hired me. Hell, look at me. Turned into a podcaster. I'm glad I did. But just because you work for someone doesn't mean you're them. I kind of realized why I never even thought about getting back. And once my career this way, I was like, I'm not Howie Roseman. First, or Veach. Like I knew I don't like football as much as those guys. And listen, football's my life. Like, football to them is crack, and they're addicts. Same thing with the coaches, Andy, Sean McDermott, all these guys. So I just think, yeah, I mean you can get by on resume in football based on I worked for Jim Harbaugh. Okay, well that was a long time ago. What have you done since? Well, not much, and it hasn't gone well. People don't talk, but it's like you can parlay that for a while. Okay, last question. Why do you think touchdowns and yards by quarterbacks are down despite the rule changes and the extra game? Pat threw 50 in his first year. Brady had 43 a second year, and others had close to 40. Now 36-ish is considered a great year. I think Sam Darnold had throw 35 or 36 last year, and it was incredible. You'd have to get I think you'd have to get like a defensive coaching roundtable and offensive coaches to kind of get truly their thoughts on this. One consistent theme I see when listening to coaches' press conferences is a lot of these teams now, and this is why I think the running back has come back, is playing a much more conservative shell. Like, we're not going to just give you big plays. We will let you dump it to the running back. Running backs have a lot of success now in the passing game. And obviously running backs are coming back from running the ball because what happens with a defensive backfield and linebackers cheating back, right? You can run it on them, right? It's like you used to go Peyton Manning. You had a corner as your nickel corner that couldn't tackle. He would call runs to them all day long. So you just take strengths first, their weaknesses, and you go. And it's like, you're just going to give me a free 5-6 yards. And if I got a good player, all he has to do is break one tackle or make a guy miss. It's a 20-yard gain. So I think There's probably several variables, but I think one big thing is the conservative nature of defenses throughout a game. It used to be there'd be a lot more crazy aggressive teams. Wink Martindale kind of felt like a dying breed of just, I'm going to blitz, I'm going to play man. Now, I also think this DBs as a whole are probably a little faster. So the speed of, and safeties as well. When people that I grew up watching, like Tim McDonald, Atwater, and then meeting guys when I worked in the league, like safeties, like Louis Riddick was a safety in the NFL. Todd Bowles was a safety in the 80s. Safeties from the 80s and 90s look like linebackers. These guys are 6'2". When they played, they were like 215 pounds. Guys now are not as big. It's much more because back then you went over the middle. Those guys would give you, I mean, they were giving concussions out like they give out orange slices at a kid's soccer game. I mean, you meet some of these former safeties. John Lynch. I remember the first time I met John Lynch when he was working with the Niners. And, I'm like 5'10. I'm not that big. He towered over him. John Lynch is huge. You go to practice, though, like the safeties don't look like him. He's bigger than all the safeties at practice. And if we went around the league, Kyle Hamilton is an outlier. Back in the day, Kyle Hamiltons were everywhere. Cam Chancellors, that body type, it does not exist. They're all smaller. So when you're smaller, you're faster in theory. But I mean, so I think team speed on defense doesn't mean they're good DBs, it just means they're faster. So I can chase you better. Where you have more explosive plays when you have the bigger safeties because if they took a wrong angle, they couldn't run with the wide receivers. It does feel like there's a lot more team speed with the back four and even the linebackers. Like, think about the linebackers now. They are not. You watch that Cowboys doc of the Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones, 90s Cowboys. Ken Norton Jr. is like a 255-pound run stuffing linebacker. When he went to the 49ers, him and Gary Plummer, those guys, like, they don't exist. No one plays like the best linebackers, like Fred Warner, Roquan, are like hybrid guys. It would have been much harder for them to hold up back in like the 80s against these run heavy teams that just leaned on you. Well, people don't lean on you anymore. They spread the ball out and throw. So I think it's a philosophical uh, and just size change. I just think they've adapted in the human beings that play those positions, and the schemes are much more conservative that make it more difficult. It's why I think we've seen these running backs kind of have a little resurgence for sure.